You're watching episode number 11 of Windows 365 Masterclass. In this episode, we are going to compare Azure Virtual Desktop with Windows 365. We're going to understand what are the main differences, why you should choose which solution for your virtualization need, and how to configure both of these solutions. And I will try to give you a couple of tips which can help you pick the right solution for your customer. Let's begin. We're going to use the Azure portal to set up Azure Virtual Desktop infrastructure for this demonstration today. So before I go ahead and do this, let's quickly understand the differences between Azure Virtual Desktop and Windows 365. Let us first look into the journey of a typical customer before they choose any VDI platform. A typical customer using a traditional VDI pretty much deploy all the platform and everything what they require in their own data center, and they have to pretty much manage the entire stack all by themselves. Then we had another option with Azure. So you could very well go and set up RDS, Citrix or VMware on Azure itself. So pretty much Azure will give you the entire platform, like wherein you can go and select the right operating system, then install. If it is RDS, you need to make sure that you install the licensing server, connection broker, all sort of required things. Citrix, then you put the Citrix environment on top of your virtualized operating system and then you configure it. Even with VMware, it's the same. But the idea is the customer will have to manage the whole virtualization plane. How do you manage your network? How to deploy it? It comes with a lot of overhead, to be honest. Then Microsoft brought another offering into place, which is called Azure Virtual Desktop. Using this solution, Microsoft pretty much takes care of the virtualization control plane as well. So with this platform, it becomes like a platform as a service offering where Microsoft manages all the underlying infrastructure needed for you to stand up your virtual environment. All you have to worry about is making sure that the right servers are configured, manage these servers in the backend, fine tune it, do an automation to bring the servers down if you are not using things like that. So it made it even more easier for you. But you still have to take care of a lot of aspect all by yourself. The latest offering in the virtualization space from Microsoft is the Windows 365. Here, as a customer, all you have to take care is the identity and the devices. Identity is nothing but the user who you are going to assign this virtual device to. So basically, you get the license from Microsoft and you assign the license, and pretty much everything else from the underlying infrastructure to your data center, everything else is managed by Microsoft. Once you provision these devices, you can pretty much add that device to your existing Intune or a CCM to further manage the life cycle of the VDI platform. It's very simple, very straightforward. Because of that, one, it gives you enough speed and agility to actually deploy these virtual instances at scale. So all you have to do is purchase few licenses, assign it to users. There you go. The pretty much all the VDIs what you need is ready for you the moment you assign these licenses. You don't have to worry about scaling or provisioning the hardware or making sure that you have enough capacity in your data center or anyone else's data center. All of that are thing of past. And Windows 365 give you enough flexibility to actually move around and take these licenses and reassign it to your user or resize cloud PCs at your will, bringing you the great flexibility for cost saving as well. So let's quickly look at the comparison first. What are the things you need to be aware of if you're going to pick Azure Virtual Desktop? From a management point of view, Azure Virtual Desktop, you still have to pretty much manage everything. So it comes with a lot of overhead for your virtualization team to actually go and like manage it consistently. That doesn't mean there are no benefit. So if you are planning to use Azure Virtual Desktop, these could be one of the reasons. One, you need a multi-session platform wherein Windows 365 will give you a dedicated one-to-one personal desktop. Here you have an option to either use multi-session or a dedicated PC. Another great advantage or use case for Azure Virtual Desktop is you would be able to publish application. So your requirement is to only publish application then go with Azure Virtual Desktop, because Windows 365 doesn't offer you that capability. Another thing is greater control. If you as an organization want a greater control in terms of what server infrastructure you want to host, you want to fine tune with the automation how much resources you're going to allocate to each virtual instances, then pretty much AVD is your option. Wherein Windows 365, you basically get a cloud PC. That's about it, and you don't have further control in terms of utilizing each and every resources you might have in your infrastructure. Another obvious one is existing in-house or outsourced VDI skills. To manage Azure Virtual Desktop, you need certain skill set, especially virtual desktop infrastructure skill set, to maintain the virtual instances, not only deploying it, going further, how do you manage it? So you need to make sure that you have the right skill set. Another great reason why you should be considering for AVD is you only need to pay what you consume, because this is an Azure platform offering. It gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of like fine tuning the infrastructure. So you only pay for what you use. So if you're great at automation, if you are really skilled at managing your infrastructure, you might find this a bit more cheaper compared to Windows 365. Or if you already have some existing infrastructure already in place, or you already made investment with Citrix or VMware, you have a license agreement with them which you would like to continue, then AVD becomes your perfect option. Now let's look at Windows 365. If you are looking for a dedicated one-to-one mapping for a user to use a virtual desktop, then you don't have to look any further. Windows 365 is the perfect solution for you, because just like Exchange Online, all you have to do is get the license or the right SKU. The SKU will consist of the amount of RAM and the vCPU and the storage you would like to use, and assign it to a user and forget about it, just like any other PC in your organization. With Windows 365, the management is done by your end user computing team. The responsibility lies with the team who actually manages your workplace devices, like mostly your SCCM team or your Intune team, rather than your infrastructure team, because there is nothing like a fine tuning or the server infrastructure needed for Windows 365. And if you are a company you don't have the required in-house skills for managing your virtual infrastructure, then again Windows 365 is a compelling solution where you can simply kick off the project today, and you could very well finish the whole internal setup which is required for Windows 365 within 1 or 2 days. And rest everything is just managing the day-to-day operations, which is quite easy because cloud PC becomes like any other PC within your organization. You just add that cloud PC instances to your SCCM policies or your Intune policies to constantly deploy apps or maintain the patches and things like that. Another control what Windows 365 gives you is the predictability in terms of cost. So if you want a guaranteed fixed price offering for your VDI, Windows 365 is the perfect choice, because you already know what you're going to pay for each SKU, and that is not going to change. So that's an advantage in your side. And if you don't have any long-term commitment, or if you are nearing to the commitment what you have with any third party like Citrix or VMware, again look at Windows 365, explore it, see if it fits your user personas within your organization, and try it out. And Microsoft is making huge investment in terms of Windows 365 as a solution itself. So all the latest and greatest features which is going to come to Windows, it's going to come to Windows 365 as well. So that's the high level view on Azure Virtual Desktop versus Windows 365. Now let's go and configure Azure Virtual Desktop in your Azure environment. Then we will configure Windows 365 as well, so that we can compare both solutions. It's been quite some time since I deployed an Azure instance. So let's go and see what are the changes which Microsoft have made in this solution recently. Let's go to your Azure portal. Go to portal.azure.com. On the search box, type in Azure Virtual Desktop and select Azure Virtual Desktop from the services. It's quite easy to deploy Azure Virtual Desktop these days. If you want to know the deeper dive On all of these aspects, I have created another video bootcamp just for Azure Virtual Desktop in the past. So if you go under Cloud Bootcamp, um, so there is one video I made an year ago that is still relevant, which include 12 different types of exercises for Azure Virtual Desktop. So you can actually go and watch that if you want to have a deeper dive on Azure Virtual Desktop. So let's go back. Click on create a host pool. Select the subscription resource group. I'm gonna actually create a new resource group. I'm gonna call it AVD resource group. Click OK. Give a name for your host pool. I'm gonna name it as AVD host pool. Location, I'm gonna keep it in Australia East. I'm not gonna enable the validation environment. Preferred application group type. Do you wanna deploy as an application or a desktop? This is one of the great benefit of going with Azure Virtual Desktop. So if you want to just deploy as an application, that is remote app, then AVD is the right solution for you, not Windows 365. So I'm just going to compare the desktop with Windows 365. Just select desktop and select the host pool type. Do you want personal or pooled? Again, this is one of the main difference between Azure Virtual Desktop and Windows 365. Windows 365 will give you a personal desktop, so it's one-to-one mapping. The whole resources allocated to that VDI instance is for that user. Wherein pooled, you can carve out the resources for multiple users. It is otherwise known as multi-session. So I'm gonna take pooled. If you are going with pooled or personal, there is two types of algorithm you can use, breadth first or depth first. Again, in the other video, I explained this in detail. One will give you an ability to fill your existing resource first before moving into another server. Another one is it actually go ahead and fill individual instances in different server in a round robin fashion and come back. So I'm just going to go for with depth first. Within that session host, how many number of user per sessions you want to allocate? I'm not going to have a big instance, so I'm just going to put 3. And let's go to the virtual machines. So here, do you want to add Azure virtual machine? I'm going to select yes. Do you want these virtual machines to be hosted in your existing resource group? I'm going to retain yes. What's the prefix you want to give to the session host? I'm going to call it as session host. Virtual machine location, I'm going to pick Australia East. Availability zone, I don't need because this is a test environment. Security type, I'm going to retain standard because I'm going to delete it after the test. Image, what type of operating system you want. Again, one other advantage of using Azure Virtual Desktop is you can create Windows Server instances. If that is your requirement, go with Azure Virtual Desktop. Wherein Windows 365 can only give you Windows 10 or Windows 11. So I'm going to pick Windows 11 Enterprise Multi-Session with Microsoft 365 apps installed. I'm going to retain the existing default VM which is given by Microsoft, 2 vCPU, 8 GB RAM, and number of VMs I'm going to just put it as 1. Hard disk type standard SSD. Boot diagnostics, I don't need it. Virtual network, I don't have a VNet created for this. I'm going to leverage an existing VNet I have, which we created for the last episode for the dev box. I'm going to retain that. Network security, I'm not going to have any. The type of join, do you want Active Directory or Azure Active Directory? I'm going to pick Azure Active Directory. This option was not available when I was last exploring the AVD. Do you want to enroll it to Intune? Yes, I'm going to enroll it to Intune. Virtual machine administrative account. This is the local account. Provide the admin username and password. If you have any custom configuration URLs, you can provide that over here. I don't have any, so just click on review and create. So this goes through a validation process. If everything looks normal, we will be able to create it. So let's go ahead and click on create. All right, so the deployment has begun. So I'm going to pause the video. We'll come back once this is finished. You know what? While that is happening, let's do the Windows 365 provisioning as well. So I'm going to use a couple of users for this testing. So let's go back to users. Let's pick a couple of users for the whole testing. So I'm going to use these two users. Timaki and Uramaki are the users I'm going to use for this testing. So I'm going to quickly go to one of these users. And first step is to assign the Windows 365 license. I'm going to go to licenses, go on assignments, and I'm going to give one user 2 vCPU. Click on save, and I'm going to go to another user and assign another license for another user. So this user I'm going to give the 4 vCPU. Click on save. So now we have two users. These two are the users which we are going to use for both AVD and Windows 365 testing. Now let's go back to devices. I'm going to pretty much quickly go through the steps. You already know that. If you are not quite sure about what I'm doing, I have made detailed video on how to provision Windows 365. Just go and watch the previous episodes. So here you can see that all of a sudden there are two cloud PCs are not provisioned. Not provisioned means we have just assigned the licenses, but it doesn't know how to provision. It doesn't know what operating system, where to host, what architecture to choose, things like that. So you remember in the previous episode we talked about provisioning policies. Provisioning policies are the one which determines how to configure your cloud PC, what operating system to use, what architecture need to use, things like that. So I'm going to use the basic architecture, which is Azure Active Directory join with Microsoft hosted network. So all I need to do is find the group, because already we created the provisioning policy. I just need to know which group I need to add this users to. So I'm going to copy the group name, go to the groups, search for the group, and let's add these two users. So while the AVD infrastructure is getting ready, we are getting the Windows 365 also getting ready. So these two users are already part of this group. I'm going to add two more members. So go to users, scroll down. I'm going to pick these two users we discussed, Temaki and Uramaki, and select, and these users are added. Let's do a quick refresh. All right, I can see that there are 4 users added. Now if I go back to Windows 365 Admin Center, click on Cloud PC Creation, go to All Cloud PCs, you will soon see these two devices are under provisioning. It uses the provisioning policy we picked up, and both are going to have a Windows 11 Enterprise. This is going to approximately take 10 to 15 minutes. So while the AVD is been provisioning, let this also provision in the backend so we can test side by side. All right, so both are Azure Virtual Desktop, and let's check the Windows 365. Windows 365 also provisioned. So Windows 365 provisioned really fast because it's just provisioning the cloud PC. And now to use this cloud PC, all you have to do is go to windows365.microsoft.com and start accessing. Everything else is done. So you don't have to do anything else on Windows 365. Where in Azure Virtual Desktop, we have to configure the resource to start using Azure Virtual Desktop. You can actually go and see both of these in both Azure. So let's go to the Azure portal. If you go to Azure Active Directory, click on devices, click on all devices. If I sort this device by registered date, you will soon see the 3 devices we provisioned. These 2 are cloud PCs. The third one is the session host. It's all available in the Azure portal. Similarly, if you go to your Intune portal, if I go back to Intune, click on all devices. Again here, click on all devices. And if I sort this out by last check-in, the other way around, you can see that these 2 are cloud PCs and the third one is session host. This is great. It is already enrolled to Intune, so it's easier for me to deploy apps and updates and manage these devices. That's great. Now let's go back to the Azure Virtual Desktop. To assign user access to the session host or the pool, let's go to under Manage, click on Application Group, select the pool we created, which is the AVD host pool that is for the desktop. Click on that, and under Assignments, let's add the users who we want to give this access to. Click on these users. I'm going to give it to these 2 users and click on Select. Now these users who we have assigned should be able to access their first virtual desktop. There should be a multi-session virtual desktop. And the final step is to create the workspaces. So click on Workspaces, click on Create, select the existing resource group we selected, give a name for your workspace. I'm going to call it as AVD Workspace for Desktop, location Australia East. Next, click on Application Group. Yes, we should be able to register the application group. Click on Register for the application group and select. And next, click on Advanced. We are not going to make any changes here, and click on Review and Create. After the validation, click on Create. But I find this article for the Azure AD join machine. We have to configure the role assignment for the VM. So we have to add these users to virtual machine administrator login and virtual machine user login group. So let's go and do that. I'm going back to my Azure portal. So this time click on virtual machines. The session host is this one, the session host 0. Click on the virtual machine, click on access control IAM, click on add role assignment, search for virtual machine, expand this. So I have to select virtual machine administrator and we are selecting one more. Next, I'm gonna add user. First user is Ramaki and the second user is Temaki, and click on select. Review and assign, review and assign. I'm gonna do the same thing for the other role as well. So go to virtual machine role. This time we are going to select the virtual machine user login. Click next. Click on select member. Select the user and select. Click on review and assign. This should be sufficient for us to log into the Azure Virtual Desktop session host. Let's go to the website, provide the username and password, and let's try to connect to the session host. Click on submit. Let's try one more time. So for some reason, I'm not able to connect via web client. So let's use the remote desktop app. While that is happening, to connect to your Windows virtual desktop, you can click on Cloud PC and provide the password. So you can see that it is already started connecting and this is my Cloud PC. So let's use a remote desktop client to connect to the Azure Virtual Desktop. So click on add a workspace, provide the URL. The URL is rdweb.wvd.microsoft.com and click on add. This is where you have to provide the username and password. You could either provide either one of the user we selected. I'm going to sign in as the first user, Ramaki. Click next, provide the password and sign in. So again, in this workspace, you can see there are two PCs assigned. One is the Azure Virtual Desktop session host. Another one is the Windows 365 Cloud PC. So we have already connected to Cloud PC in the background. So now let's connect to the session desktop. So I'm going to launch it. It is pretty soon going to ask the username and password, provide the password and click on continue. This should automatically connect to the session host now. Here you can see that the connection is established and that's why you get that green dot. So this is very promising. All right, so that is signing into the user session host for the first time. Since I had three screens, it is actually showing the three screens. You get the idea, right? So you can access your virtual desktop either using your Azure Virtual Desktop or you can connect to the same user using the Windows 365 Cloud PC. The configuration of both are different and the consumption model is also different. One, you have to set up everything in Azure for the Azure Virtual Desktop. You would be paying for the session host which is running here. There is going to be a variable cost based on the compute, the storage associated with it, additional cost of the network inbound and outbound, things like that. For Windows 365, all you have to worry about is the SKU or the license you assign for the user. So if you look at this user, we went into the licensing tab and we assigned a Windows 365 license to the user. That's all we have done actually. And as soon as you added this user, we start seeing that the Cloud PC started provisioning for that user. So if you go into Cloud PC creation, all Cloud PCs, you can see that the Cloud PC is provisioned for this user. Very simple, very straightforward. We didn't have to do any other configuration like what we have done for the Azure Virtual Desktop. So that's a quick comparison between Azure Virtual Desktop and Windows 365. I hope you find it useful. I will see you on the next one. Take care.